Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Hub Underground. Matt Dolph here with Ty Anderson, as we are every single episode. We're doing a remote episode. As you can see, if you happen to be on YouTube today, this is a YouTube episode. Thankfully, we got to get on YouTube for the people, but it's because we had to squeeze this in as a remote episode. Ty, unfortunately, his microphone is not functioning the way he would like because his cat ate it.
Yeah.
And so, Ty, if it's possible, is Grim there? Can we bring in Grim for some questioning?
She wants nothing to do with being on a camera right now.
Oh, absolute coward.
A lot of people are saying it.
Will not face the music.
No.
But no, you sound great. Just the fact that hearing your voice is good enough for me, and it's probably good enough for the people. We're here on video. We're here for the YouTube folk. We're still working through some technical difficulties and equipment stuff and all that, but we thought we'd give you a little Sports Hub Underground action here on this fine Wednesday afternoon. I am at the Sports Hub office. As you can see, we really went all out with the decorations. We got the Mona Lisa up there. And Ty is at his remote base on Earth 716 or whatever Dr. Doom is from.
Yeah, well, there's a Doom in every universe. You gotta, I don't know which one we are on right now.
You're Doom though in this universe.
Yes, that's true. I am from Latveria.
That's what I almost like Liberia, Latvia, Lithuania.
No. Yeah, it's all good.
all good. Okay, so should we just get right into the Bruins topics?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there's probably already going to be 78 comments like, you're not getting any money from me until you talk about hockey. And it's
I'm not getting any money from anybody regardless, I've found.
Well, sir, we're barely getting money from anyone, so that's okay. We're not asking you for money. We're just asking for your time to watch the video and listen to the pod. So thanks for listening. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple and Spotify, in addition to YouTube sometimes. You can get every episode at 985thesportshub.com and the Sports Hub app. But yeah, like I'm sure a lot of people are getting this on YouTube. So congratulations to them for today. So Ty, actually an interesting day for you. You are actually down at the Garden to get some conversations going with some Bruins players. There are Bruins players in town working on, God knows what. I'm sure you got a better idea of what they're working on as the offseason goes on here. And, we're about a month away from training camp. So, we got to start ramping up toward hockey season at some point. I know it doesn't feel that way in the Boston area right now with this incredible heat wave. But we got to start talking about the hockey club at some point. I know we do it on every episode here, but you got to talk to some of the Bruins. Let's start with James Hagens. James Hagens in town. He's getting ready for, his first year or second year at BC, first year, in the Bruins organization. But he's going back for another year at BC. We talked about it last episode as right move. I don't think there was any need to really rush him to the NHL. So I'm curious what you talked to him, what you talked to Hagens about. What would you say was the overall tenor of the conversation?
Oh, it's good. It's excitement. It is, this is not his first time in Boston, obviously, as we all know. But this is his first time in Boston as a Bruin, as a future Bruin. And so he's been skating. He's telling me he's been skating at Warrior right now with his future teammates. A lot of the Bruins are actually in town already. They have been skating at Warrior, doing some informal skates. Like Mason Lohrei is back in town as well. Tanner Jeannot, I know, is in town right now skating at Warrior. Jordan Harris has been skating here all summer. Obviously, he's from the area. So a lot of them, I know Brad Marchand was skating here recently as well. So, they're kind of all at Warrior right now. Today's event was a charity event with TD Garden and Salvation Army. They do this every year. They give like 3,000 backpacks to children in the area, and it's in tandem with the Bruins and the Celtics. So that was the event that they were at the Garden today, and caught up with a few of them after. Really cool event, always good to help the community. But this was the first time that James Hagens is, it feels real now, right? Like he's doing community events, he's working with his future teammates. It's really interesting, and it's fun for a guy like that, right? Like you're 18 years old, You've had a whirlwind summer, and here you are. School begins in a couple of weeks for him. It may actually begin like next week, I think, at BC. But he's really soaking it in, really having fun, and I think events like the one that he took part in today, like I think they make him feel like he's even more a part of the community. Beyond like the getting drafted part and everything like that. Like, no, like you're here, right? And this is what is going to be, expected out of you off the ice, as your status grows here in Boston. And so I think that, for a guy like Hagens, like this is kind of putting a bow on his offseason as a Bruin. This is the last event that he's going to do with the Bruins because he is reporting back to BC in a couple of weeks.
Can you clarify something that I think we touched on last week? Like he's not allowed to like fully participate in training camp, or like he can't do training camp with the Bruins.
So he's not gonna.
He can't do it at all.
No, he could, but he's not gonna.
He could, but he's not going to.
Okay. There are mechanisms the Bruins could use to have these guys at training camp. Now, the problem with that though is twofold. One, it interrupts their school year. The Bruins don't want to do that. Two, he can't play in games. So he could practice, but he can't play in games. What are you really learning? He's practicing. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them. So
you can skate around and practice like with anyone at any time.
Right.
Without playing in a game.
Which there's really not a huge benefit to that. If you're gonna upend a school year and upend his practice with this team, he's gonna play the year with, like, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if you can't get him in games. Like at that point, you just trust Greg Brown in BC to put him on the right kind of program. That's a team that wants to win a national title this year. Like you just trust them to, like, they can practice at BC and it's as valuable as him practicing with Boston Bruins. I know it sounds weird, but like it you have to look at it as an entire picture, right? And if you could bring him in and he can only practice, and you're going to mess up his school schedule, then it's probably just better for him to just stay at BC, which is the plan right now.
Sure. Yeah. And you mentioned the national title aspirations for Boston College, which is pretty much every year, but I know it's not the same level of expectations as playing for the Boston Bruins in the National Hockey League, but it's probably a good test for him to get his feet wet with the the weight of the expectations that comes with playing at an elite college hockey program like Boston College. And now, like, he's going to play a much bigger role with guys that, he has former teammates that are now in the NHL, and they're not going to be at BC this year. And so there's going to be more on Hagens to produce and, be a really a critical piece of what they hope is a national title team. And so that's going to be good for him to sort of get, get into the experience of playing in this city. And, the pressure that comes along with that. And I know, obviously, like I said, it's not the same as the Bruins, but it would be good, sort of a good intro for him in that regard. What are your expectations for Hagens individually? Because he was a point per game player, I believe, last season, like, more than that. And, I would expect at least that this year. I would hope maybe an uptick in overall production, scoring, that whole thing. It might not be fair to be like he needs to be a Hobey Baker contender. I feel like those kinds of expectations might be put on him by guys like us in the Bruins media who are watching his every move. But you just expect him to at least continue the production that he had last year and be right in the center of it as far as the Eagles competing for a national title. Like, I think that's a fair expectation for him, isn't it? Just to be a critical piece of a top contender in the country.
Yeah. I mean, do the points follow? It all depends, right? Like losing Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, like those are two great pieces. Ryan Leonard, in my opinion, should have won the Hobey Baker. I thought he had the best season out of anybody in college hockey a year ago. Now, with that said, like they do have some guys that are still promising players, right? Like, do you want to put a BC veteran and a Bruins draft pick like Andre Gassot next to, James Hagens? You could. Gassot's had a good year, good career at BC. He's big body. He's one of these guys that tends to play well with high skill guys. If you want, you also have Nashville's second round pick, Teddy Stiga, who has been Hagens' line mate with Team USA in the past. Good player, high ceiling kind of player as well. And so they're going to be a good program. It's just, we talked about that and to me in the story, like being more of a driver, right? Not to say that he was just along for the ride a year ago at BC, but, he's 17 years old when the season begins. He's basically the age of a high school senior playing college hockey and playing top line college hockey, and so I think the challenge for him this year is about just driving his own line, driving his team. And that's going to be, on full display this year when that season begins and when it ends. And, he is going to be the focal point of their offense and their team as a whole. And so, he likes that. We talked about that, and a quote he had that stuck out to me. And it's a quote that, other people have said over time, but, he said, pressure is a privilege. And I like that pressure. Like, he wants the pressure to be the guy that leads BC. And so we're going to see it now. We're going to see it unfold in real time. And so, points, I would love 45. I'd love 50, if he could push for it. But if he's making the difference every night and they're winning games and he's putting up 40 points in 35 games, I'm happy. It's just, you want him to be healthy, but you want him to be, I think, above all else, like, driving play on a team that is a national title contender, right? Like if he puts up 50 points, but they're not a great team, then you're kind of like, okay, well, I wanted some more meaningful moments along the way. And so, it all depends how they all look, right? They should be a good team. This isn't David Pastrnak on the Bruins last year where he was the only thing they had. It's just, right. You hope that he gets that opportunity to play in some legit meaningful games, and that he is given the chance to be that pressure guy, that high leverage moment guy. Because, you look at his career, Matt, like outside of last year at BC, when going against his peers, he has been a dominant presence, right? And so he's closer to his peers now as a sophomore at BC than he's ever been, and so let's see how that looks, because the history to this point has been promising player against his peer group, sophomore year at BC, turning 19 in November. This is closer to his peer group than last year was, for sure.
Yeah, the peer group thing is a good point, because like we saw a little bit with Team USA recently, and whatever the American International Ice Division, American Southwestern Division, East Northern Junior Championship.
Oh, the thing in Minnesota?
The thing in Minnesota. Let's call it the thing in Minnesota.
Yeah.
He put together some highlights there. He came up big in some key situations. So, yeah, he does seem like a guy that sort of embraces that. And, like, that's obviously a good thing long term. But it might be an important thing for him in the short term, because, like, let's say it does all go according to plan. Like, not even necessarily that they win the national title, but, like, say they're in the Frozen Four, or they make a real push in the tournament, and he's showing up every night, and whether or not it's like a big time scoring, but like he's playing a key role, driving his line, like you said, playing multiple situations, making an impact all over the ice. He might have to do that relatively early for the Bruins. Like, I know he's not going to be a finished product at age 21, 22 when he's just entering the NHL, but at least offensively, the production might have to be there like real soon, like right away, pretty much. And like, I know like he's going to be under that microscope once he finally gets here and he's playing for the Boston Bruins. But for this team and the situation that they're in, like, I think they're going to need him to step right in and sort of be an impact guy, at least offensively. Like you sort of got to figure it out as you go in the NHL in terms of like learning a two-way game and figuring out how to play that whole 200-foot ice. Like, I know he's got to take time to figure that out. And sometimes guys do take time to, blossom, like, into their late 20s. Like, I know that takes time, but for Hagens, I feel like there's going to be pressure for him to, step right in and make an immediate impact.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's part of being, the highest draft pick of the Don Sweeney era and of a team that does not expect themselves to be in the spot all that often. Like, you kind of like, the pressure is going to be there, right? And it's about delivering. It's about rising to the challenge. And, I do think that it sounds weird, I know, but like falling to 7 might be the best thing that happened to him, where like he's still considered a highly touted prospect for obvious reasons, but now he's got something to prove. Now he's got something maybe to stick it to some teams that passed on him and say, hey, I like being the former number one consensus overall pick. Like I got something to prove, and now I'm going to prove it. And so, I kind of like that to a certain degree, that a guy who was at one point the consensus number one fell, and now he's got to lead a team. He's got to prove some guys wrong, like mentality wise. Like, I think that it's a driving force, but it also hasn't consumed him. Right? Like he's excited to lead, but he's not excited like just to shut people up. Like, I think at times like that motivation can be consuming. I don't see that with him. I see a guy who, he's got his head on straight and he's got his goals, and now we're going to see how he can, make them happen.
Yeah. So far, so good. It's going to be interesting to see how he performs in BC, and then what he looks like when he finally gets to the NHL, which I assume is going to be, a year from now. We're going to be talking about James Hagens actually being in training camp as a member of the Boston Bruins. We'll see how that all goes.
He might be here in April, honestly.
True. Yeah. He could be here at the end of this coming season. Yeah.
Like true. I got a feeling that he is going to perform really well at BC, and it's going to be all right. Time to go to the NHL. I do think.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I like. Maybe he gets another year, but I'd be very surprised if I'm sorry, a full offseason program. But I got a feeling they're gonna want him to, or he's gonna want to play a game in the NHL to end the year. And it all depends where the Bruins are, of course, as we've talked about before. But it just feels like he wants to do it. The Bruins have a need there, and depending on where the franchise is at in terms of in the playoffs, in the hunt, whatever you want to call it, like, or if they're out of it, like he's a jolt of energy for the franchise that they might want to give their fan base, and maybe more importantly, their players. If you're looking at a second straight did not qualify with David Pastrnak in the prime of his career, a way to keep him happy might be, hey, look at the center you're gonna have feeding you the puck, next season.
Give him some hope.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a time where David Pastrnak was the hope, perhaps for guys like Bergeron, Marchand, and Chara, who were like, we're all getting older and we're not getting better. What's going on here? And then David Pastrnak comes in. You're like, oh my God, this kid can play. So there might be some of that too. You never know.
That's a good analogy with Bergeron and those guys. When you get to 2015, 2016, and it's like, oh God, we've lost in the Stanley Cup final. We choked in the second round. Now we're missing the playoffs. Oh my God, we need help. And then here comes David Pastrnak, right on time for that. And they have this whole second wave at the end of their careers there. And so that's going to be interesting to see. And yeah, I was actually going to ask, like, would it matter where the Bruins are in April next year? Like if they're right there in the playoff hunt, like, yeah, I could see them definitely bringing in, the number 7 overall pick to give them a little jolt and a little boost of energy. But it was actually, I thought you made an interesting point that, like, if they suck again, it might even be worth bringing in Hagens, get his feet wet in the NHL, and give Pastrnak and the team and even the fans and us, like, just something to hold on to and hope for next year, that things will get better. And so, me, like, I'm skeptical that the Bruins are going to improve as much as we want them to. I don't know that they're actually going to be, in that hunt for the playoffs. I think I do expect Jeremy Swayman to be a lot better. But just defensively, like, you really hope that they have the structure and all that back. I just don't know that they're going to have A, the talent, and B, everyone's going to stay healthy. Like, that's a big question for me. And
well, let me put it to you this way too. I've been talking to some people of late about this team and about what went wrong a year ago and what can they fix. And, I think you nailed it right there, mentioning Swayman. Like, if he's better, that answers a lot of your issues, right? The biggest thing is going to be health. And I know that's an obvious statement, but if you have a good base, right, of, let's call it like your foot soldiers, so to speak, right? They're good at being foot soldiers. They're not good at having to step up and be a general, right? Like, not everyone can be a general. So if you have your generals, if you have your McAvoy, your Hampus Lindholm, you have perhaps a better Elias Lindholm after having a year in finishing strong. You have David Pastrnak. Like, if you got everybody who, like, you want to be, your on ice leaders in terms of whether it be vocal or play style, whatever you want to call it, like, that allows everyone to kind of be their person, right? And so I think what that's the biggest thing for this team. So if they're healthy and if they get some guys that are a touch better, Swayman, Elias having a better start than he did a year ago. I would include Nikita Zadorov in terms of like having more of like a set role and expectations out of him versus a year ago. Like you're going to have a better sort of collection of guys that know what to do, right? And know how to play their role. I think last year you had, when you look at last year, right, and you look at the mix they had out of the gate, right, they weren't playing well, but then you also had guys that were your foot soldiers, right, and we're now elevated full time, and you're like, no, Justin Brazeau, you got to be this guy all the time. Trent Frederick, you got to be this guy all the time. It's a little bit different, right? Guys are like trying to find where their footing is, but also in a new role, and the team's not playing well. The coach is checked out. Like what's the goalie held out? Your captain doesn't have a contract. Like, I feel like if your base is steadier this year, you might be a better team. Now, does that lead to more wins? We're going to have to wait and see. But they already, I think, feel better about their team now, knowing where guys are going to slide in, knowing where guys, okay, this guy, we didn't know what he was, but okay, now he's out of the picture. Like they're putting their faith in some guys that, got to prove it, of course. But I think this time right now versus a year ago, I think they feel a little bit better about the complexion of their locker room and sort of, I guess, where everyone's going to slot in versus this time a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I brought up health for the defense, I know it's obvious for every team needs to be healthy, wants to be healthy, but McAvoy and Lindholm, they get hurt a lot. Like they have a history like that. Mm-hmm. If you have no injury history and you're going into the season, well, you just gotta stay healthy. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, there's no need to worry about that. I think there's extra worry about it with McAvoy and Lindholm. So that's the only reason I brought that up. But yeah, like as long as everyone's healthy, as long as everyone's healthy and they know where they're slotting in, Swayman's playing better. They got the structure in the system. Like they should be better. I just gotta see when I believe it. But moving on to the next person that I wanted to talk about that you talked to earlier today, that would be Mason Lohrei, who we mentioned throughout this pod a little bit. This is a guy that we've had, I guess you could call it debates, the closest thing to a debate on this program about what he is, what he can be, especially in the defensive end. And it's like, look, we both agree he's never going to be Nicholas Lidstrom in his own end. He's never going to be, a Chris Pronger winning the MVP as a defenseman with his defensive prowess. But I think with Marco Sturm, who I do feel good about as a defensive-minded head coach, I think he can get to Lohrei just enough where he could at least be, maybe average, serviceable, decent, whatever adjective you want to use in your own end. And I think he could definitely greatly improve upon, the minus 45 or whatever he was last year. Like, I know that was ugly. He did not have a good year in his own end. That also speaks to, the lack of depth and the injuries that they had last year. Look, he had to step up and play a bigger role than maybe he was ready for. I also think he's still young and he still needs time to develop, as all defensemen do, especially in the defensive end. But that's just my thought on Mason Lohrei going into the season. I expect him to improve at least somewhat defensively, just working with Marco Sturm and just having a natural improvement, having another year of experience, and maybe not necessarily having to play as big a role as he did after McAvoy and Lindholm got hurt last year. But I'll turn the floor to you, Ty. What was your conversation like with Lohrei?
It was a lot of just like, you've been on two different kinds of Bruins teams now. You were on a team that was a playoff team, and you're on a team that was a bottom feeder basically. And, mentally, do you feel like you've learned anything about yourself through those 2 years? And, I think the way he said it was just, going through that first year, making the playoffs, winning a round, and the next year you're not in the playoffs. He said it does make you realize how hard it is and does, kind of reinvigorate you and want you to get back to that level of playing as both a player and as a team. A lot of our conversation was around Marco Sturm. You mentioned the defensive, kind of acumen and what he can get out of those guys. And, I do think it's worth noting, Matt, that, you look at you look at the LA Kings and what they've been able to do the last couple of years, and there has been developing of defensemen. There's been developing of Jordan Spence, of Brandt Clark. You want to go Mikey Anderson. Although Mikey Anderson was in the NHL before Marco Sturm was taken over down in Ontario. Marco Sturm was on the coaching staff that, helped break Mikey Anderson into the NHL. Like, they've been able to get something out of their defensemen, and Brandt Clark's natural talent. He was going to, he was a first round pick. He was going to be that guy probably regardless, but
right.
Sturm has been able to coach those guys, and the LA Kings have had a recent little run here of younger defensemen popping off for their team in some fashion. And so, that's encouraging, right? You hope that continues with a guy like Mason. And really, for me, it's about how do you utilize it? You look at this lineup right now, and you got 6 defensemen, and you can kind of move them all around and try to find the perfect pairing. And, do you want to give Lohrei to McAvoy right out of the gate? Based on what Marco Sturm said on Felger and Maz when he appeared with them, sounds like that's what he kind of wants to do. He mentioned that that's a pairing that has been a good pairing numbers wise in the past. And so maybe that's where they go out of the gate. But this is also where, keeping a guy like Henri Jokiharju could have some value, right? Like, if you want to really protect Mason Lohrei and you want to give him more of a sheltered Torrey Krug break into the league kind of role, Jokiharju is a good transporter. That's a good guy to have with him. And you can shelter that pairing and put them out there, give them a lot of ozone run and see what happens there. So you have some options with a guy like him. But I do think that, he has been talking to guys that have played for Marco Sturm, have played with them, with him. And he's basically said, he's like, we've had good conversations, and the conversations that I've had about Marco with other people, have been very illuminating in the sense that, Marco is very black and white. He is just going to give it to you straight, and he's going to tell you where you're messing up, where you can be better, what you're good at, all of that. And so I think that can really benefit a player like Mason Lohrei, who is still trying to figure out what it is that he needs to do well in this league to be a full-time NHLer, And so I think that Marco can really be helpful for him in that regard.
Yeah, look, I'm big on this. I'll say it, until the end of time, and that these guys don't come into the league fully formed, especially on defense. And even McAvoy, I feel like, has been sort of up and down in his sort of development and what he can be. I don't know that he's reached his full potential yet. But, hopefully that comes within the next year or two. Maybe Marco Sturm unlocks something with McAvoy. But yeah, you hope the same with Lohrei. One area where I think Lohrei can definitely make an impact, where maybe finally Marco Sturm can figure this out and actually do what you've been saying for years, which is that got to have a lefty on that power play. You got to have a lefty power play quarterback. McAvoy not really a great fit for that spot, being a right shot, and it's never really he doesn't really excel at that in that particular spot on the power play. And so this could go back to the assistant coach that they hired specifically to work with their power play, Steve Spott, who was with the Dallas Stars before, and he has really a history of at least improving power plays, early on. He doesn't seem like a guy that's been able to stick anywhere long term, and so we'll see how the power play goes long term. But I think he's obviously going to be key in developing the power play. And I feel like if Steve Spott can come in and tell Marco Sturm, look, we got to put this kid who's 6'5" and has good offensive instincts, can skate and handle the puck, we got to have him quarterbacking the power play. Do you think that could be an area where we finally get to see, more of Mason Lohrei and see Mason Lohrei make the kind of impact that we hope he can make?
Yeah, I mean, to your point about Steve Spott, worth noting that the Dallas Stars did have Thomas Harley, who is a lefty, running their power play as their primary quarterback a year ago. And Harley had 50 points. Obviously, he was on Team Canada at the Four Nations. So it may stand to reason that even Spot is going to go, we need a lefty back there, and try to find a way to make that happen, whether it's Lohrei or Hampus Lindholm. That is obviously where his biggest value is going to be, Mason Lohrei's value. I mean, you watch the way that he can make really interesting puck plays with the puck on his stick. open himself up for really good looks through traffic. When he activates and he can get between the circles, you're pretty damn confident it's going to go in the net, which is kind of remarkable for a defenseman. But he's got a great snapshot, great wrist shot that he's got to use more. He's got to use it more as his top weapon. So that is the biggest thing. It's just about, again, how do they view Charlie McAvoy? Do they view him as the do-it-all defenseman in all situations, top unit in every facet, or do they look at him more as, how Team USA looked at him, which was, hey, be a 3-zone tone setter, take your chances, but you don't have to quarterback a power play to be an elite defenseman, right? Like that is something that I think kind of drives me mental when it comes to the Norris voting now. A lot of the Norris voting is like, well, okay, who's the best power play quarterback? It's like, no, I don't want that to be how that award is voted on.
Right. Just make the Paul Coffey Trophy for that, and then make the Norris the best all-around defenseman.
Yeah, like I don't think that to be an elite number one defenseman in the NHL, you have to quarterback a top power play unit. Like, it's a nice bonus, sure, but like you don't have to do that. And so
I feel like that feels like a specialized skill to me for a defenseman.
Yeah.
I think there's just so much more to being a defenseman than that one thing.
Yeah, and when Charlie McAvoy is on, what makes him on is not necessarily things that I think are like power play qualities, if that makes sense. Like his timing, his anticipation, his reading the play, like those are what I think make him an elite defenseman at this level. Like he is a really, when his game is on, like fluid motion, makes it look effortless in terms of like denying scoring chances and jumping up and stifling time and space for the opposition. Like that's not really happening on the power play all that much, right? And so it's okay. But I wonder how they utilize him. But I do want a left shot back there. I just feel like that's where it flows the best. And right now, if I were like a betting man and how I want to do it, I kind of want to have Lohrei or Lindholm quarterback in it. I want to have Pastrnak on one side. I want to have Zacha on the other. I want a lefty. I want a lefty shot over there taking the Marchand spot on the other half wall. I think Lindholm's good in the bumper, and you got to get that retrieval guy. Who's that going to be? It could be Arvidsson. Arvidsson has had history in that spot in the past. He had a great year for LA's power play about 3 years ago in that role. So, what do you want to do there? Like, that's what you got to figure out. But I do think that Mason Lohrei could be a massive weapon on that back end, on that top power play unit.
I really hope so. Yeah. I hope they finally go in that direction. I just completely agree that McAvoy can be your number one all zone defenseman, making $9.5 million, and not have to have that burden of quarterbacking the power play, which is just hasn't been a great fit for. So that'll be something to watch for.
Matt, we're in the era of that guy. We're in the era of Cale Makar and Roman Josi and Victor Hedman and Adam Fox and like Quinn Hughes, Zach Werenski. Like those are, listen, they're unbelievable defensemen, but that's not the only way to judge a number one defenseman, in my opinion. And that's kind of one of those things that has been annoying, like we're in the era of that guy winning Norris's, and that's just how it is, right?
Are we in the era of them winning Stanley Cups would be my follow-up to that.
Right. Makar's the one who's done it, right?
Makar has, yeah.
But like,
didn't do it by himself, but I'll give him credit for that.
But did the Florida Panthers have like a guy that you were like, holy shit, that guy's a Norris winner? Or do they have a bunch of guys that you're like, that guy could win a Norris, but he's going to win playoff games, so what's more important to you? Right. like Ekblad, Montour, those guys are like, I look at those players as like players that really grew their game in terms of their physicality, creating more offense, but you didn't look at them and go, oh man, they're gonna win because they're their number one power play quarterback. Like, no, they're just great, complete defensemen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I do love about McAvoy that you mentioned is the seamless 200-foot game. I think that's when he's really at his best, going between the three zones with making it look effortless. So
I would argue, and I got to look this up, I would argue that the Panthers won when Ekblad's numbers finally went down, as weird as that sounds. And when Brandon Montour wasn't like a 60-point defenseman, they won championships once that happened. Like it was everything they were giving them was a bonus, right? And so I think that's something too that like is worth noting.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think like that goes to what I always say about centers, where it's like Steve Yzerman didn't win a Stanley Cup until he went from being a 150-point guy to a 90-point guy that plays a two-way game.
Right.
Mike Modano didn't win a Stanley Cup until he went from being a 50-goal guy to a 30-goal, 80-point guy who plays elite two-way game. So it's like I feel like eventually these guys have to sacrifice a little something to play the all-around game you need to really win. But like we're getting a little ahead of ourselves with the Bruins, doing what they need to win the Stanley Cup. But hopefully we do see that sort of all-around improvement from McAvoy, and hopefully we see the power play sort of move more in the direction of Lohrei. And so one more topic to close us out here, Ty. We talked about this a little bit when you and I did the radio last Sunday. The era of the hard-ass coach feels like it's back in Boston. We had a little bit of an era of a nice guy thing going on for a little bit, and I think unfortunately that doesn't really win. If I'm being honest, tell me the coach is just a complete nice guy, friendly, best friends with all his players, not serious at all, doesn't take his work seriously, and they win at a high level. I don't think that exists. I know that like people will say like, oh, Andy Reid is likable, or Sean McVay is likable, but like that's like those guys they're pretty businesslike when it comes to actually going to practice and preparing for games. Like they take stuff seriously. It's not exactly like Gerard Mayo being all buddy with the players and Jim Montgomery acting like the nicest guy in the world publicly. I just don't think that tends to be a recipe for success from a coaching standpoint. I do think you need to have a little bit of a red ass going on, like Joe Mazzulla. For all his warts, I think his intensity and the fact that he has a little bit of a screw loose, I think works to his advantage as a coach. I think Mike Vrabel with the Patriots, I think like he's a ball buster with the media and things like that, but it's really all business the way they conduct themselves at practice, and they take football very seriously. It's very good. It's good football vibes down there in Foxborough with the Patriots. So I feel good about the Patriots' chances of having a good year because they're going to be well coached and have sort of a hard ass coach that, is taking things seriously there. Where does Marco Sturm fit in that equation? Because Marco Sturm, to me, feels like his style, at least, based on the Kings, is going to be that hard-nosed, style that I think you need that to at least have a baseline of winning and having success in the National Hockey League. You can't just be this go-go offensive team and expect to win the Stanley Cup. You got to have some level of toughness and discipline and that whole thing. And I feel like Sturm is going to bring that. Like I know, like when he talks and when he was on Felger Maz, he seems like a gentleman, like a good guy. But like I think when it comes to hockey, like he was a good, tough, hard nosed player. And I feel like that's going to translate to him being a head coach in the league. And I feel like, head coach, he feels a little hard assy to me. And I feel like that's what the Bruins need. And I feel like that's what any team needs if they want to have success. And so that's my initial thought. I'll cede the floor to you on that.
Yeah, I do think that he is going to have more of a blunt approach, and he's going to be more of a, demanding that everyone pulls on the rope in the same direction. If you don't, you're going to know it. You watched him with Team Germany, like he was like a tactician, but he would lay into the guys, and demanded they play a certain way because that's how they had to bridge the gap between themselves and teams that had more skill. And I think, this is a Bruins team that is going to have to do that. They're going to have to squeeze every ounce of offense out of, whatever stick it is that's on the ice. And so he's going to have to, really kind of put
just
guys in.
Just going to be a stick on the ice. It's just an inanimate carbon rod is going to be the Bruins' number one center.
You got to find ways to score more goals, right? And I don't think you're going to have a lot of time to be, kind of pussyfooting around that. And
oh, bleep that out, God.
You have to, like, he's going to have to establish the demands early, right? And so this is something that I think the Bruins were late to last year. They were late to realizing they didn't have a good camp. They were late to realizing that their coach was not as engaged and their players were not as engaged as they were a year ago. And so Marco Sturm has to set the tone right off the bat. And And, you know, this has been yet another offseason of Bruins general manager Don Sweeney saying, oh, if guys earn spots, they're gonna earn them. Okay, well, that happens in training camp. I better see it on opening night. I better see you make a hard call on somebody that you signed if they blow. If they can't play and the young player is better, guess what, man? Your team and your coach not in a position to say, nah, go down to the minors because you have options still. No, I want to see the good players. I want to see the guys that freaking earn it. So let's see that. If a guy earns it, I want him playing. And I think Marco Sturm has to set that expectation and perhaps rock the boat a little bit. You know, like if a guy like Matty Poitras earns the spot out of training camp, you know, and that puts somebody like, I don't know, Johnny Beecher or Casey Middlestad in potential of being the healthy scratch or being out of the lineup, like, then so be it. So be it. You know, no more sacred cows. You don't have any besides 88. That's the only one that you're like, oh, that guy's that like in 73. But like that's it in terms of like, you know, bona fide players that you are not, you know, you are looking at and going, nah, we can't upset him. Like, no,
right.
Like, if a guy earns it, earn it, you know, and I think Marco Sturm is going to be very clear in how that is communicated to some guys last year that either didn't play well or didn't feel like they got enough run or whatever the case may be. But like, I do think he's going to be blunt because he knows that they are up against it in terms of the pure talent on this roster. They're going to need guys that are willing to, you know, take on his personality and be an MFer out there, you know, because that could make the difference for winning and losing for a team that doesn't have the natural skill.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For this team. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Be a hard ass, be blunt, do all those things. Don't be unapologetic and push back. If you have that sort of thing with Sweeney, like, what I'm more worried about is more if like he and Sweeney are going to be more in lockstep on the thing you're talking about, where it's like Matty Poitras not ready to play. He's not ready to play the hard nosed style we need. So we're going to have to go with this yet another, you know, AHL player, like being forced into the NHL lineup. Like that's going to be something to watch for, you know, next month, you know, anyway, when they get into training camp. But I do feel that like Marco Sturm is going to be, he's going to give tough love to the players. I think he's going to be tough, the right amount of tough on the guy and be tough on the right guys to sort of get their asses in gear, where it's like, guys, you've been underachieving for years now. Like I need more from you. And so like, that's what I hope that Sturm can bring to the table. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. This nice little remote episode. Grim has been in the background bathing herself and doing whatever the hell she wants while she chews up Ty's equipment. Now, good for you, Grim. Thanks for muddying it up for us.
Yeah, she's a bitch. No, I love her. She's great. She's been attacking Ozzy, and Ozzy's like, yo, can you chill?
Yeah, Grim is a feisty one. I like it, but adorable little pairing.
And she's named after the Thing, there. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, there you go. You got the Thing. Time. We got Doom. So you need to get your next cat. You need to name her the Invisible Woman.
I mean, before Doom died, like a jerk. Way to die, jerk.
R.I.P.
No, before she died, we were gonna get another cat, and we were gonna name it Reed, as in Reed Richards, and it was gonna be you know, Doom and Reed. But yeah, it sadly did not happen.
Should get a big old fat cat, name it Galactus.
You know, I'm not gonna lie to you, Ozzy's getting pretty big. She is. She loves eating. I
saw I'm not saying that. I saw the pictures. She's like twice the size of Grim right now.
Yeah, no, it's true. But she's like afraid of Grim, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, Ozzy.
But yeah, no, Ozzy's great. Yeah, you know, this is a weird time of year, man. This is a weird time of year. We are so close to hockey and yet so far. So this was a nice way to end my off season in terms of a couple more interviews, and you know, here we go.
Yeah. This is about the end of the off season. I think next time we talk, you know, maybe hopefully next week that, you know, we can actually start looking toward the season. Maybe we'll start doing like Bruins preview type stuff as we've been grinding through the off season as long as we can. So thanks for listening, folks. If you made it this far, thanks. I love you. This is the Sports Hub Underground. I'm Matt Dolph. He's Ty Anderson. He's been slowly ascending into heaven based on the lighting going on in his apartment over there. So it was nice knowing you, Ty. I'll see you on the other side.
I'm
you got
going
any
to
final
hell.
thoughts for us?
I'm going to hell.
Okay, little boy, you're going to hell, like in the South Park movie.
Yeah, no, I got nothing else. I'm happy.
All right, we're good. We're good. All right, thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for watching on the YouTubes. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.